afternoon off-day edition after Game 3. Celtics in command again.
Yeah, they are.
We're here to talk about whether it's over. We always ask that question, Josue, whenever the series swings.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Whenever you ask that question, what happens? How do the Celtics respond? It's usually not the way you expect them to, right?
Right. So
let's do it anyways. Then.
Letdown could be around the corner, but the Celtics, ever since Embiid came back, and you did get a strong Joel Embiid performance last game, 30 points, looked more comfortable, got to the rim, sort of at will, and shots started falling for him as well. Sixers are going to leave that matchup, and they did today. Doc Rivers spoke, Tobias Harris, others, saying this series is about as close as it gets. Doc had this great analogy, and I don't have the sound lined up, but he asked Shake Milton, he said, "Do you go to class?" Milton's like, "Yeah." And he goes, if a 3-game series is as close as this possibly could be, what would the series be? And he said Milton went 2-1. And he's like, 2-1, there you go. And I guess that kind of does describe this series so far, Josue. Last game, pretty well contested until the final few minutes where the Celtics pulled away. Game 1 decisively in the Sixers' favor. And Game 2 decisively in Boston's. If I had to swing it one way or the other, I think you're obviously pointing it toward Boston right now. But if you're going to say, is this series done? I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I'm not either because we know who this team is, right? The Celtics. And let's face it, that's a big part of their character. They blow opportunities like this, like let's just call it what it is. That like they you look at the history last season's run outside of the sweep against the Nets. I mean, they tend to go prolonged series when they have a chance to close it out. And the best example is what happened last week against the Atlanta Hawks. So you're wondering if the Celtics can change things this time around and come out of here with a 3-1 lead. But Doc Rivers, I mean, he's a guy who, because of his experience, man, I'm really interested to see his approach next game in Game 4 because he's been through a lot of series like this where it just seems like the Celtics were down and out. I know when he was coaching the Celtics, it seemed like they were down and out, and he was able to swing the series and how that's actually a spot on for him to say that. No matter how close this game was, Friday night, the series is still going to be 2-1 no matter what, but you still can get the sense of where this team is at. You have no idea how they're going to pull up in Game 4. And it being an afternoon game, the Celtics, riding high right now, how are they going to respond? Because you're going to probably get the best swing out of the Philadelphia 76ers that we've seen all series. And I'm wondering what that's going to look like, and especially concerning James Harden. Is he going to respond? I mean, was that a one and done thing? I mean, Bobby, what do you think? Is that something that we're going to look back on and be like, that was it? That was the last thing he had to shut down his naysayers about his postseason play, and then he's going to, see what happens with his next chapter of his career, if he sticks around, if he does it, if he leaves. Because I don't know, man. Something inside of me is telling me that he's got another great performance in him, and that it could happen Sunday. It could be Sunday afternoon at Wells Fargo.
It can't get any worse. I mean, 18% over
right.
2 games.
It can't get. I mean, the law of averages, right? I mean, it just can't. I can't imagine him doing that again or anywhere near that Sunday.
It's unfathomable what he's going through right now, and part of it's Boston's defensive pressure, but it can't be all that. I think a lot of this stems from putting Embiid back on the ball, and I was actually talking with. I think I had some, better conversations with the Uber driver today than the either team, and he said when that ball is in Embiid's hands, and he had a bold take as they do here in Philly, which is great.
Yeah, everyone's got.
He said if the Sixers lose this series, you have to start to think about Embiid and have a tough conversation there, because look at how this offense is flowing without him on the floor in Game 1, through a lot of these bench runs, and that's my analysis there. I think the Sixers have looked better into their bench and Harden as well than with Embiid and the starters on the floor. Some of that's Tucker out there too, but he said the ball's not moving. Everyone's standing around and watching Embiid. And when Embiid is this diminished version of himself, which he's going to be for the rest of this series, it's easy to load up on him. And Tobias Harris said that today too. The Celtics are loading up. They're, packing the lane.
Yeah.
And right now, unless the Sixers start hitting a lot of threes, and you saw them try to go to George Niang late, You saw them try to space the floor a little better in the fourth quarter, and they did with Melton out there and some others. The problem is Embiid, I think right now is looking for his shot rather than trying to get other guys' shots. Whereas in game one, Harden was ready to set guys up for shots if the Celtics were going to bring doubles, and they only brought the single team, so he was able to exploit that. Like, you got to be able to make good decisions on the ball, and right now you have to wonder if the Sixers should get the ball out of Embiid's hands and put it back in Harden's.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that I think they're going to explore at some point in the series. But I'm wondering if that's going to be Sunday or is it going to be the desperation move? And I feel like it might be the latter, just because I don't know
if they go back to Boston 3-1, I don't even at that point.
Yeah, of course you do, but you change your approach and you lean towards having the ball in James Harden's hand, and well, obviously you see how his knee responds, but I mean, if he's available, he's going to play. That's just what Doc Rivers has been preaching since the beginning of the series, and he's not going to change now. I just think that there's a happy medium that Doc is trying to explore, but the way the Celtics are defending right now, it's really got him, trying to figure out the ultimate solution at this point, because you look at the way that fourth quarter played out. I mean, for Tatum to go off the way he did, those 7 points in the last few minutes, if you're the 76ers, you're wondering, man, if that doesn't happen, how do we put ourselves in position to win this game? Because they were there, It wasn't like the Celtics dominated throughout the entire second half. Yeah, they built that double-digit lead, but, the Philadelphia 76ers, it's for me, it's been the outside shooting that's going to unlock that, opportunity for the Philadelphia 76ers at the end of the game. If you can have people in rhythm and the flow's going and the Celtics defense rather stumbles, that's when they're going to capitalize on. But it's just sticking around, like Doc Rivers said, up to the fourth quarter, which they have done, is what's key.
Yeah, the Uber driver too said this is just a brutal matchup for Philly, and
this guy has no idea. Like you're you know what I mean? Like, this is great though. If he only knew, like what he said to you, stuck.
It was great. I got some really good insight from him. Again, I should be reporting.
Go on. What are you saying?
I should be reporting on all the practice quotes and what everybody said at these availabilities today.
No, we lead with this first. I like that.
We
want to hear what the people are saying out here in Philly. No, this is dope.
We got the best analysis from the Uber driver, and he's a grueling matchup. And the more I listen, Doc today put that good spin on it. I think they feel good about where they're at overall. But I think the Sixers just need to play so head and shoulders above what they normally do. You saw what they did in game one, the extraordinary, maybe best playoff performance ever from Harden, and it still only steals them a close win in that game.
Right.
And then all these other guys who can step up with a career performance along the edges of the roster. I don't see it from Tucker, and Harris has been okay, but he's sort of giving you average production night in, night out. I don't think there's like
he's been Harris. Game. Yeah, he's just been Harris.
Yeah. And then Maxey, this is probably the worst matchup in the NBA for Maxey, the way the Celtics attack him and the way they're trying to integrate two other ball handlers alongside him. Big bodies in the paint, rejecting his drives, team that's getting back on defense so he can't get all those runouts. The Sixers just don't have enough depth of scoring right now, and that's how they only end up with 102 points right now. So as much as I don't want to call this series over, because as you said, the Celtics are prone to letdowns, I don't see how they get back in this unless Embiid just keeps getting better and better, and maybe at that point he can steal one.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a possibility, right? But the way these games have been so sandwiched together with just one off day in between them, the likelihood.
That's another factor. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like the likelihood of that, I don't know. I mean, could he put out a better game than when we saw in game two? Yeah, but how it's going to be significant? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see that another type of performance like that, especially in this series. But I mean, 30 points, 13 rebounds. I mean, that might be as good as it gets. And if he's able to duplicate that, then that's a huge win for the 76ers. And again, it will put them in position. But yeah, I mean, look, that's like what I was saying, or what everyone's been saying going into the series, and why the Celtics were heavily favored is just because Boston's depth. And when they're playing defense at a particular level, it just throws so many obstacles for the Philadelphia 76ers, especially when they're not knocking down that 3-point shot. But Harden, I mean, look, what he did in game one, it's something that obviously is what we're going to look back in the series in the sense of it changed sort of somewhat the narrative, but overall the Celtics are still heavily favored, even with Embiid back in the mix, to win this series because of that, because of the depth.
Yeah, and it's interesting. What would it have looked like if Embiid didn't come back, or at least came back later in
We'll
this
always
series?
wonder. We'll always wonder. You think the series is still 2-1?
I don't know. All I know is from what we've watched so far and what the Uber driver said, this Sixers team was harder to guard, or maybe less predictable than when Embiid's out there on the ball. And now we're talking about Embiid. What was he, minus 23 in game 1?
Yeah.
In game 2, he finishes, I think, a pretty steady negative again. He was minus 8. So that brings you to over minus 20 for the series.
Yeah.
So far, not great, and scored well last game, got to the line, slowed the game down, grabbed 13 rebounds, blocked 4 shots, so he's got 9 blocks so far this series. He's defending well. The offense has to find some balance, though, and I think that's going to be the toughest part for them. From the Celtics' perspective, I'm thrilled with the balance they're finding right now. And a couple injury updates today. Rob came out fine after that fall. That would have been one of the biggest stories of the day if he was about to miss time again here. He practiced with a sleeve on his right arm and said that's probably about all the treatment he's going to need. He thought he tore something the way it felt at first, but he ended up escaping with just a bruise from the way they described the injury there. Grant went to the dentist after the game. With the Sixers dentist actually took him to his office and got him his stitches, fitted him for a mouthpiece. So that's the only treatment Grant's going to need going forward. As far as their play, I've complained about their defense all year, Josue. I haven't seen the forcefulness on that end. I haven't seen the intensity or even focus on that end of the ball. And a lot of people did not like what Joe Mazzulla said about focusing on offense after that game 1 loss, despite giving up all those points to Hart and everything else.
Yeah, and did you catch that little retort when I reminded him, because he didn't have a box score in front of him, so I told him the numbers, the 3-point shooting numbers between Boston and the 76ers, and when I said the Celtics numbers, when I said what they were, he was like, oh well, that was the opposite of what happened in game 1. Like I feel like that was his way of saying, well, see, we didn't shoot enough threes, like I said, and if you look back at game 1, and in this game it was just enough to win the game when both teams made exactly 16 3-pointers throughout the night in game 3.
Yeah, I'm thrilled with that. That seems to set them up better on defense in terms of getting back and playing the positions they need to on that end. No turnovers, that makes sense, right? You're not giving up transition if you're not turning the ball over. Everything Mazzulla said makes sense on that end. And I did get to talk to Marcus before last game, and he said early in camp we focused on offense. We thought offense was our kryptonite. Yeah, we slipped up defensively throughout the year, but that defense is always going to be there when we need to flip the switch. And that was the team's mindset for a lot of this year. And now I think they're actually embracing it by flipping that switch. Brown, Horford, Rob, Smart too, early in this series, and especially against Atlanta. These guys are starting to defend at that level we saw last year. And this last win, giving up 102 points, I thought this was the closest I've seen this defense come to looking like last year in terms of winning a game on defense.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially in the postseason where they took things up another notch. I mean, Jaylen's been the leader in that, and that's great. I really do believe, we can't mention it enough because of what it's done to the series in the sense of getting everyone on the same page, and obviously the game 1 loss triggered that, right? James Harden dropping 52. A lot of people didn't expect that he still had that in him at this stage of his career, and it woke up the Celtics. I think they hadn't been down in the series up until this point, or up until that point. And you look at the way they've responded on defense, and that's exactly the identity of this team that we saw last year. A big part of that. Now, this is a team this year that has other offensive weapons, and they've been more of the offensive team throughout the NBA. But you look at what Mazzulla was saying at the end of the season, which is where the Celtics finished top 5 in offense and defense, a thing that he believes is a key catalyst for any championship team. So for the Celtics to hit that mark, I think it speaks to obviously how they can dominate on both ends of that, but to see it, actually see it after that Atlanta Hawks series where we weren't quite sure where that defense was going to lead going into the second round, I think it's been big. It's been the biggest difference why the Celtics are up 2-1 in this series.
Right. And I do want to get to some of the fun stuff from yesterday, too, all the comments. It continued today at practice, I guess, according to Jay's tweet. I wasn't looking when,
Yeah,
when this
Jay tweeted about Blake. Blake asked Al who laughed at him when he talked about being an elite shooter, and I guess he pointed him out. Al had no problem. He had no problem pointing him out in front of the entire Celtics beat. I guess everybody laughed about it.
Let's get to that. But first, of course, shout out to FanDuel. FanDuel.com/Boston.
Damn, I ruined the tease, Bobby. Shit. I didn't know you were doing that. I didn't know.
It's not a tease. It wasn't a tease. It was a giveaway. People know what we're about to talk about, and I think they're excited too. And of course, it's exciting that we can still bet here in Pennsylvania. I think Josue, right?
Did I log on last night? Yeah, I did. So yeah, we're good.
Yeah. FanDuel.com/Boston. This is for only people in Massachusetts. If there's any Philly fans watching, sorry. But in Mass, got a great new offer. Up to $1,000. No sweat. Bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/Boston. We're about to go to the Philly Red Sox game in a little while here. And
yeah, I'm logging on right now. Yeah, so it's reminding me.
Check those odds.
I'm in
Celtics,
Philadelphia.
Red Sox on a 7-game win streak. I think that's a good time to see what the odds are on that front. And anything, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs continuing, all of that's going on FanDuel right now. This is really April, May, when you think about it, the best time of year to bet. And new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. They got great promotions every day, and the app's awesome. You log in, you see those promotions right in front of you, odd boosts, special parlays, those same-game parlays everyone loves now, great promotions, and it's a safe and secure app that pays you instantly. There's no better place for all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com/Boston, get you a no-sweat first bet. That's up to $1,000. Here's all the terms and conditions. Celtics, let's see tomorrow, Josue, on FanDuel as they enter Game 4 here. A critical swing game for both teams in this series now. Going to set the tone for which direction the series goes in. Celtics, as they did last night, enter -3. And they ended up covering the 2.5, of course, last night. I thought the Sixers might be able to cover that on an Embiid night, but didn't happen. Celtics pulled away late. But that's FanDuel.com/Boston. You want to check that out. Let's get into it, Josue. The Missoula stuff, the Horford stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
People love this feisty Celtics team. Clapping back at all the noise. This Horford thing's so funny because it was the smallest slight. Like you said, it's not like, and we'll throw his name out there, Duke Castiglione. It said, you're not an elite.
Damn, Bobby, you got to drop names, man. It's messed up. No, I'm just kidding.
It's not like we
did it last night, dude.
Really, Al? Elite? He didn't do any of that. He just laughed like everyone else did. He just laughed a little too hard, and Horford capitalized on that. And I do wonder how much Horford wanted to set that up by saying elite shooter the way he did. Al's looking for some motivation, and we talked to him in the locker room. You mentioned this last night in our hit, Josue, the motivation of the Philly crowd. Believe me or not, Al said he's moved past that. I don't think the booing or the time spent here or any of that gets to him as much as it might have in the past. So this is that new inspiration he's looking for. 2 for 10 Al, 1 for 8 from 3. You're losing that 3-point shot, and then he comes out and hits the 5 there. And you saw a different level of energy and intensity from him as we often do in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And especially when you look at his numbers going into the series, or at least the first 2 games, I mean, he just wasn't there, right? It was a 2 for 18 or something like that. And you know the law of averages, right? We've seen what Al did all season long and being one of the elite shooters out there, if not one of the best for sure. in terms of his accuracy. So you're waiting for him to bounce back, and there it was, Friday night with the 5-for-7, clip from behind the arc. And yeah, maybe Duke add a little bit more inspiration in there, but I just think the hostile environment in general, it really does inspire these guys. It lights a fire under them. We know what Marcus Smart, said about it, and just overall how he feels about that type of environment. He thrives in it, and Jason Tatum said a lot of the same thing, especially seeing everyone sitting through the Joel Embiid MVP ceremony, which is everyone agrees well deserved. They're happy for him in the sense of like they got it right, and this is the guy that everyone's saying, whether you talk to Al, whether you talk to Marcus, whether you talk to Tatum, that he's the MVP of this season. But they like to quiet the crowd after that, right? And essentially they did that in this victory. So I think all that plays a part. It plays a role into where their headspace was, Friday night, when it's them against the Sixers, against the crowd, and the risk of going down 2-1 in this series and having to go back into that same environment on Sunday. And obviously what they've been hearing in Boston about what we say, right? Can they be consistent? Yeah, they respond when they lose the first game, but that's what they do when they lose a game that people expect them to win. But can they still continue to have the same approach throughout the stretch of the series? We're going to find out on Sunday.
Yeah, and they could earn themselves some more rest by closing the series out. I'm watching the Heat Knicks now, and who knows where this game's going to go. But the way the series,
it's going to go the distance, man. So that would be big for this team if they can get an extra, day's rest. But see, I don't even want to go down this road yet until after Sunday, because we have to wait and see. 3-1, you feel a lot more comfortable, having that conversation and the fact that it's legitimate, because we would be 2 days away from essentially ending the series. But we know how these Celtics like to make things interesting,
Right. Yeah, and this series, the Celtics series, is still close enough where I do think you have to watch and hold for that game 4 to see what direction it's going to go in. Of course, it'll be contested if it's 2-2 going back to Boston. If it's 3-1, at that point, like I said, I wonder if you even bring Embiid to Boston for that game because of the risk of playing him through this injury. Doc said he's healthy today, got the sheets, all good results, and of course the play looked good. So yeah, you might be right, Josue. He might just play this series out no matter how it goes. It's going to bring up some tough questions for Philly, though, if they do fade from this. Harden needs to step up. Harris, I think you're always looking for more from him, despite his consistency. You just want that little bump in play.
Especially at this level, you just hope he can step his game up, just for like that for the final stretch of the series. Yeah, for sure.
And it's a big moment for Doc too. What little adjustments can he make to narrow this gap? Because every game the Celtics have just been leading by 8 to 10 points or so. But on that Horford point, before we get out of here, has Joe's influence cast over this team, you think, when it comes to stuff like that, responding to slights, the motivation, the internal motivation they're trying to build? Because Tatum mentioned the Horford thing, and then I saw the video this morning. Joe mentioned the Horford thing in the locker room. Oh, you're an elite shooter. And then all the gripes about the media coverage and the line of questioning we heard from Joe after Game 1. He did address that going into Game 3 last night. He did an off-day interview after Game 2, and he logged off after a couple questions, and I guess got caught saying I'm the worst coach ever, and it sounded like he was mocking the media. I guess he explained it yesterday as he was getting off and realized he didn't congratulate Smart on winning the Hustle Award, and that's why he said, "Oh, I'm the worst coach ever," as he got off there. I don't know if I believe that, but if that was the case, it does at least make sense for why he would do that.
It provides context. I mean, if that was the case, it's worth explaining. Yeah, because sometimes on those things you can't hear the other person. Sometimes you can, but other times
he might have seen Smart or something. He said he texted Smart, so you wouldn't have seen him. I don't know. That was a strange moment there. Anything else you want to pick on here?
No, I mean, I was just gonna say what your I don't know, I guess you're getting into a question, but you kind of just put your thoughts in there. But no, I do think that they thrive in that type of, hey, you hearing what these guys are saying about you? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he's saying it like that, but obviously they have a chip on their shoulder when they feel like the outside noise isn't in their favor, right? When people are like second guessing them, and a lot of those question marks came roaring back after they lost game one. Same question marks that happened when the Atlanta Hawks series, went back to Atlanta when everyone thought that they had a chance to close that out, and Janet Jackson had switched up her concert. Like, that was another opportunity where the Celtics had a chance to close out, and back came the criticism, back came the questioning. So I think they use that as motivation, especially someone like Joe Mazzulla, who he's very, I want to say, like, spiritual, like, maybe not spiritual is the right word, but like, it's about like mental health and making sure that everybody's on the right page. And I do think that he's one of those guys that checks in with players to make sure that everything is good on that side. Whereas some coaches, maybe they don't emphasize that as much. And we're finding a lot more about Joe Mazzulla throughout his first season as head coach, and the way he practices jiu-jitsu, and practicing breathing, and how it helps him make critical decisions at times where you have to make sure that things are aligned to enable you to make those great decisions. So I think he's preaching that type of stuff, that type of energy to his entire team, as he should, because it's something that he believes in, and it goes in with his preaching. So yeah, all of that, I do think that the Celtics are, they use that as motivation, they thrive in that. But that's good. That's a great thing. I like that. I like to see these guys show that mental toughness, and I want to see what that looks like in Game 4.
What's it going to look like if the Sixers push this longer? Because we know what the Celtics have to do. If they fall short of that,
the beard's going to have a big part of it, man.
It's the beard. I think it's going to be Embiid continuing to progress toward the kind of games we saw from him during the regular season. And if he can solve this defense with one of those iconic performances, this could go 6.
If he can duplicate, even if he just duplicates what he did in Game 3, that's huge. Like, that's a big advantage.
You think that was enough?
I think that was enough, man. Yeah. 30-10 or 30-13. Maybe he gets to the free throw line more in Game 4, so he doesn't have to earn it the hard way, and he gets to that 30 threshold. Yeah, I think that would be enough if you have a 25 or another 30-plus point performance out of Harden. Look, I'm not saying Harden has to go out and duplicate what he did in Game 1, but if he's efficient, if he's got the step back going, I mean, how many times did he get that step back going last game, right? In Game 3, maybe 2, maybe 3 times. That's big. He's got to get that shot going, especially in the mid-range and inside the arc. And when he has the ball in his hand and he's facilitating, he's got to be aggressive, but they have to enable him, because the offensive approach for Philly was to run through Embiid. You saw that for 4 quarters, especially throughout that first half when they wanted to get him going, as they should, because look at his overall performance. But it was Tatum down the stretch. Those last few minutes, he was able to close things out, whereas Philly, they hung around, and I do believe they'll hang around again in Game 4.
Yeah, an honorable mention to Tatum and Brown, whose defensive intensity, I thought, set a tone, Mazzulla said after the game. That's what everybody follows. And Brown at one point in this series said, I'm taking the Harden matchup, and rolled with it. And now Harden, according to the matchup data, 2 for 11 when guarded by Brown in this series.
Give me Harden. I got him. See, that's what superstars do in the playoffs, man. Not to get too, because this is kind of a bigger stage, bigger level, but it's like when Pierce said that in the NBA Finals in 2008 when he wanted to guard Kobe. Ray Allen was running laps all over the place, couldn't keep up. And he said, you know what, give me Kobe. I want to guard him. That's what superstars do. And to see Jaylen do that, man, it's great. It's tremendous. It's something that can really help carry this team all the way back to the finals.
And look at these 2 matchups. As I said, 2 for 11 against Harden. Last series, he guarded Murray for 20 minutes, held him to 3 for 16, 0 for 6 from 3.
Yep.
Those are big defensive performances, and that's where we've asked for more from Jaylen. In passing games starting to pick up, I'm just so thrilled with where Brown's at right now. Because we're always looking for him to level up, and you're like, what can he do? Maybe some of these areas he's too weak at them to have this fully rounded game, but he's tightening up those weak spots just enough to where I think he's been the best Celtic in the playoffs, I'd say. Been one of the best overall players in the playoffs too, and this team just looks so much more forceful when he's playing at his best. Yeah,
for sure. And it just opens up his offense, especially when guys are looking for him in the open floor, and he's hustling. He's hustling up there. He's not just creating a stop and letting the play go on its own. He's deflecting, passes. He's running up the floor and he's finishing on the other end. I mean, that's just high level stuff. and especially when he's getting past, some of these athletic guys who can obviously block him at the rim, and guys like Embiid. I mean, he almost caught a body. Remember that night back in Boston? He almost dunked over Embiid, and the attempt was more impressive than the actual block. It felt like everybody was talking about, man, he almost got him, instead of saying, wow, what a play by Embiid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the real benefit of having Brown out there, I think, is he's so aggressive. Those guys who protect the rim and steal off the paint, he's willing to miss some shots, get fouled, or turn the ball over sometimes to get in there and challenge those guys, which is what you need to do to open the paint. And there were some great quotes last night. He said, as the playoffs go on, putting the ball in my hands, trusting I'm going to make the right play against the matchups I have. It was PJ Tucker or Harden, put them in space. I can get by them. I can make the right play at the rim. I think that creates opportunities for our guys, and it creates open opportunities for our team. But if I'm tucked, stashed in the corner, I'm not doing anybody a service. So it's being more aggressive, getting more involved. I can create for others even by just getting to the paint, passing it out. It creates an advantage. I like the perspective. I like the desire to get the ball more often. And that is what started last game. My biggest takeaway was that Brown had the ball in his hands, not Tatum.
Yeah. And one of the bigger takeaways was when, in game one, when he essentially kind of disappeared throughout those middle quarters.
Right.
I thought what he said after the game was eye-opening. It really was, his way of saying, not give me the ball more often, but if we play in this style, I'll thrive more. And that's what's been the case. But it was up to him to take the mantle, right? He was the one that says, let me guard Harden. So, this is something that the Celtics coaches had to prop him up and do. So that's huge. I mean, for him to take the initiative as a player and to find a solution to not only unlock his offense, but to get everyone else going as well.
Yep. And that Brown discussion's up on CLNSmedia.com. Josue's got something coming on Al. Love Jason's comments, by the way, last night about Al being just as important to the offense as Jaylen and Jason because of that outside
I actually added that to my piece, man. It's gonna be out right now. It's going out soon on CLNSmedia.com.
And Doc talked a little bit about that today as well. So some good praise for Al after his big statement going into the game. And this is the best time of year when Al gets that due. Great time of year for us as well.
Nothing funny about it either, Bobby. He's letting everybody know, even though he's smiling as he says it, which I feel like even adds another element to it, because he's kind of like, "Oh, you're laughing at me?" Like kind of like not like in a confrontational kind of way, just kind of being like, "You laugh a little too hard at that joke,"
It was just like the Giannis moment, except there was a reporter and not Giannis. We're gonna go catch some sunshine out in Philly. Great time of year to be on the road. Gonna catch the baseball game. Of course, you can bet on baseball and everything over at FanDuel. Show some love to Athletic Greens, who got our travel pack so we can stay healthy even on the road. 75 vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, probiotics, and more. When you go over there, that's athleticgreens.com/garden. They're going to throw in a 1-year supply of immune-boosting vitamin D. Again, put it in your water each morning. Got everything you need for the day. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to buy all these things in other places. It's in one stop. That's athleticgreens.com/garden, your ultimate nutritional insurance. And BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/garden, going to get you connected with licensed therapists from your phone. Affordable, accessible, and convenient. Those are the 3 keys to therapy, really. And find the right person. And they allow you to switch your therapist at any time for any reason. Get 10% off when you head to betterhelp.com/garden. That's betterhelp.com/garden. Josue, thanks for joining me here. I'll see you in a little bit. And for everybody else, we'll be back tomorrow, 3:30 tip-off.
Game 4, let's go.
Game 4 here in Philly before we head back to Boston. On Monday, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report. Talk to you.